Welcome back to The Explainer. Now, joining us is Professor Prospero de Vera of the UP National College of Public Administration and Governance. Good evening, Professor. Now, let's lay out the landscape for our viewers in terms of where's the LP now in terms of its membership, where is it strong, and where does it consider its bailiwicks?
Well, the Nationalista Party, currently under Manny Villar, has a couple of local officials, some members in the House. But generally, it has not been able to rebuild itself into the formidable NP as we historically know. One has to understand, Manolo, that the NP was one of the victims of the KBL in a sense. Because when Marcos created the super party known as the KBL, for so long, it decimated the old guards in the Nationalista Party. And unlike the liberals who remained and survived through martial law, the NP after martial law was really a shadow of itself. So it has a very long way to go as far as becoming a very broad party like before.
But the conventional wisdom seems to be that of all the candidates, Manny Villar is the best organized. He has the largest number of local officials under his wing, and more joining all the time. Yeah. So even if it was sort of had withered away by the time Doy Laurel died, it's really come back in a big way.
Yes, because it has the residual history of the Nacionalista. Meaning, you go to every province right now in the country, there are people who are in the NPC, in Lakas, for example, even in Campi, who were previously Nacionalistas during the period before martial law. One of the things that Manny Villar did, which I thought was very strategic when he started to rebuild the Nacionalista Party, was he sought to go back and try to link with the families of the original NPs. So when they had this 100 years of the NP, they had a very big event, and they constructed a database and tried to trace back who are the original NP leaders in every province. I know that because my father was an NP in Pangasinan. And so if the old guard of the family was not there, they asked a representative, a son or a daughter of the original NP, to join their 100 years.
And to restore the old links.
Yes.
Now, in this sense, this also means that, before martial law, there were certain parts of the country that were considered baluarte ng NP. And some of them, for example, I believe Cavite is one. Yeah. Batangas, of course. So how's the rebuilding in terms of those areas?
Well, in those areas, it's much easier to rebuild the party because you have more. For example, in Pangasinan, Pangasinan has been an NP more than an LP country. So in the current struggle between Manny Villar and Noy Noy, for example, we're trying, you can see clearly that the LP is quite weaker traditionally in Pangasinan than the NP. So it's much easier. The NPs in Pangasinan have become NPC. So you can see that in every province in the country.
Now, there's also a difference in that Villar brings to the table something that his supporters find very important, which is he's a self-made man. And this appeals to a very big constituency in the country, even particularly, let's say, OFWs, who like that. Now, so how do you differentiate, there's the sentimental attachment and the ties of the old guard, and you have to bring in new people always into a party, so how is he addressing that?
The other strength of Manny Villar is because he comes from the business sector. He's very strong organizationally. In terms of thinking, he's very strategic in the way he looks at the rebuilding of the Nacionalista Party. So they're bringing it back not like in the traditional political party sense, but using basically the network of business associates, the network of civil society groups at the local level, to try to bring in both the traditional political leaders and also new members of the Nacionalista Party. So he's running the NP much like running a private company in a sense. And that's very strategic in this day and age, because if you tend to rely more on the traditional political party building, in this multi-party system that you have now, it's almost impossible to get party loyalties, you know, and to get the people to swear into the political party, for example. So it's using that network of businesses, network of economic linkages, network of OFW groups to try to rebuild the party on a more mass-based rather than a purely politician-based political party.
Now, going into the 2010 campaign, how do you see this playing out for the Nacionalistas? Because on one hand, if you have, in a sense, a strong brand, which is what the NP can claim simply because of longevity, at the same time, they have to appeal to a population that has no memories of these things. And how do you merge the two to make for a successful constituency?
I think the test will be whether the party building, not on the politician side, but on the network of business groups, religious groups, student groups, youth groups, whether that actually will be successful going into the campaign.
Eva Estrada Cala, who considers herself very close to the party, once said that her only misgiving about Manny Villar was that even if he had inherited the mantle from Doy Laurel, there had been no formal convention, there had been none of the rituals where, you know, his leadership is has this been addressed, or how is he going about?
I think that was a strategic move or a strategy of the Nacionalista Party itself. As I've said, they're approaching party building from a different perspective, more from an organizational, business-type approach, knowing fully well that party building using the traditional linkages of political leaders at the local level is much more difficult to achieve, and also takes longer because it tends to depend on the political winds as it shifts. Remember, the PDP Laban, for example, or the PDP of Nene Pimentel was a very formidable party during the Cory administration.
And then withered away.
And then withered away. So the lesson of political parties, which I think Manny Villar understands very well, is that if you rely exclusively on political leaders, the political winds can easily decimate your party. So you've got to develop alternative ways of linking up with groups at the local level. So the emphasis is there, I think, rather than on the traditional, you know, you swear in, you hold the convention, etc.
Now, going into the campaign also, what do you think are going to be the key campaign issues brought to the table by the NP, specifically by Villar and Legarda?
Of course, it has to, the platform of the Nacionalista Party has to follow the image, the competencies, and the perspectives of its presidential candidate. That you cannot get away from. So I think what Manny Villar would bring into the table essentially would be his business background.
So a managerial president.
Yes, a managerial president who relies on competitiveness, who relies on a spirit of entrepreneurship, you know, who would try to harness and make people believe that they will not have to rely on government too much, but can rely on themselves to lift this country up. So that if you look at his platform on poverty, for example, it doesn't follow the traditional poverty perspective where government will be providing this, government will be providing that. But he keeps on saying that he wants Filipinos to believe that they on their own can succeed, and that the role of government is just to provide them the necessary instruments for them to succeed. So it's quite different from the poverty a la Ramos type, for example, Cory administration type. Because those are the strengths that he brings into the table because of his background.
Now, you know, if you look at the Manny Villar website and the Nacionalista website, they haven't been focusing on